Good morning. Thank you guys for taking some time this morning to sit with us and go over the new surveillance hardware lineup, as well as some really cool features that were baked into the 9.0 release that released a couple months ago. So out of the gate, you guys know that we do surveillance a little bit different than our competitors, right? With the ELAN OS and with NICE, we offer a all one-in app solution where you'll be able to not only view live footage, but recorded footage, access that from any viewer, locally or remotely. Tying that in with some of our voice hooks with our native Milo voice engine, as well as the new featured routines, all of which we're going to touch on today during this webinar. Some really cool software enhancements that dropped to really bring our surveillance features to the next level. These are features that you as a dealer would like, as well as to pass on to your end user and add value to the control system that you're installing. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to go over is the new lineup of cameras, right? So as you guys know, if you've done surveillance with us in the past, we had an older line of cameras, 2 megapixel, 4 megapixel options in all of the different flavors, bullets, turrets, domes, mixed reviews on all. We always wanted to have a PTZ was the feedback we got from a lot of the dealers. And with this new camera lineup, we really think that we check the boxes on everything. So when we're taking a look, it's kind of an overview here. 10 new SKUs of cameras. We've got, fixed lens turrets, fixed lens bullets, and domes. So the 3 models that you guys are used to having from us. Higher resolution. With this new model, we've got 4 megapixel auto tracking PTZ, which we'll get into. The price point that this is at, it's a killer solution offer to be able to give to your clients. And then we got 2 8 megapixel fixed lens models, both in a turret and bullet. Now on these cameras, they've got onboard analytics. In our old camera line, we were using Intellivision for the analytics. These are a different analytic provider. It's onboard, built into the camera. So with this new model, we get motion, we get tripwire or region, which is something new, person, vehicle, and we also get, audio sense. So there's a lot more features as far as analytics on this new camera line than on their predecessors. Another cool thing we added is the onboard mic and speaker. So not only can we listen live view to what's going on, but recorded. So NVR playback, now we can not only just see the video, but we can retain the audio and play back the audio as well from specific camera feeds. As well as two-way talk. So we have the ability to use the camera as an intercom endpoint where we can talk right to the camera from any of the nice ELAN interfaces, anything running the viewer, as well as have some predetermined custom phrases using our Milo subscription. We brought back the text-to-speech with Milo, right? So you guys are all familiar that have used Milo currently. If you're not, I would encourage you to reach out to your RSM to get a demo license so you guys can start playing with it. But text-to-speech is in where we can do any custom phrase that we want and play that out of a speaker from the camera, any of our camera models. And that can be triggered by any number of events, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the presentation here. And then smart color night vision. So it does this a little bit different where we've got can be configured a bunch of different ways as far as how each camera handles night vision. We have the ability to just do normal IR. We have the ability to have a white LED illuminate based on a motion event, switch then to full color for nighttime viewing, and then back to IR after that motion event is over. Or we can set the camera to full-time color or IR. So you've got a lot of customizable features in the viewer settings when you're configuring each camera upon import. So we look at the 4 megapixel model specs. Got the 3 versions that you guys are used to. We've got the bullets, we've got the turrets, we've got the domes. 4 megapixel, all fixed lenses on these. Onboard mic and speaker. The analytics, again, motion, tripwire, which is something new, audio, person, and vehicle, right? So the tripwire and the audio, that's something new on this line, again. So there's our specs on the 4 megapixel. Then we go into the 8 megapixel. And similar camera models, we've got them, but no dome. So we're just strictly bringing in the bullets and the turrets in the 8 megapixel model. Same features as far as the analytics, with a couple differences. So we've got, object counting, people counting, cycling, and we've always got the motion tripwire, human vehicle that you guys are used to. Another thing that's different with the 8 megapixel models is the deterrent, right? So not only does it have the white LED for configured for nighttime viewing, but we've got red and blue flashing lights as deterrents. Now, there's a little bit of confusion here. A lot of people think that that's what we're using for the full color night vision. It's not, right? The red and blue flashing lights are strictly a deterrent. It can be programmed. If motion is detected, between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., flash a red and blue light as a deterrent. Someone's going around the house doing something they shouldn't, a red and blue flashing light in their face that's a little bit draws attention to the camera. Solely a deterrent on the red and blue flashing lights there. And of course, onboard mic and speaker. Warranty on all of our cameras is 2 years, goes along with all of the warranty length with the nice products here. That's our 8 megapixel options. Now we're going to get into the PTZ. So this is something that, we've been asked about forever, right? Everyone wanted a PTZ. It's not something that we offered before. And currently, if they were using a PTZ, the price point where we were getting at from a third-party competing line was way above and beyond where this one is coming in at. So what we're getting here is 4 megapixel, 5-time optical zoom on there. The focal length, I'm not going to read all the stats out, but you've got motion, audio, person detection, vehicle detection with auto tracking. So I've got a PTZ up at the peak in my backyard. Kids are walking around in the back, or I'm walking around in the back. It can be configured for tracking. So it detects a person, it's automatically tracking that person as it walks through that field of view. Red and blue flashing lights that we talked about as far as the deterrent, onboard mic and speaker like all of our other cameras, and with the 2-year warranty. Now mounting, right? So we've got 2 mounts available that are pretty much universal, right? One is in black and one is in white. They're junction box style. They're compatible with both our bullet and turrets and domes in the 4 megapixel and 8 megapixel. But with the PTZ, when you purchase a PTZ, it comes with all the mounting hardware included, right? So if you see that picture over on the left, you've got the option for a 90-degree drop-down mount, but you also have the ability where that arm can be reconfigured to go straight up the top of the camera and do a straight pendant-style drop-down. So a bunch of different mounting options there, all included when you purchase the camera. So we get into pricing, right? This is where it's even more appealing. So again, I always talk about the feedback of the last line of cameras we had, right? Price point wasn't necessarily where everyone thought it should be at as far as for the features, right? They were getting a little long in the tooth. So what we've done here, higher resolution, higher build quality, brand new manufacturer, and they're coming in at a much lower price point. So you're getting into a 4 megapixel models starting at $375, and this is MSRP, this is not dealer, all the way up with our 8 megapixel models ranging from $700 to $725. And then what's really cool is our PTZ with a $1,500 price point. Killer price for a PTZ offering with all the features that's baked into it. So with these new cameras, these cameras do support H.265, right? Up to 8 megapixel. But there's a caveat here. So in order to support the H.265, you have to have a new controller, and that is either a 150 or a 350. And the viewing interfaces, as far as the touch panels, have to be the V2 models to get to H.265 compression and enable that throughout the system. So it's important to note, if you've got the ITPV1s or the 100s, 300s, it will automatically, sense your interface controller type, and it will go, by default, it's in compatibility mode. So it'll know what your target interfaces are, and it will auto select between H.264 and H.265 based on A, the controller type, and B, the interface type that's installed throughout the home. So now that we've gone over the hardware, let's talk about some of the features that we baked in. So ELAN OS 9.0, huge update. There's a lot of long awaiting features, everything from geofencing to routines, which gives your end user a little bit more customizable options with their system. They can go in and do kind of lightweight event maps, so to speak, and we'll get to there in a minute. But we've also added a lot more features into the surveillance. Surveillance is a category that we're doubling down on, right? You always know that this is something that has set us apart from our competitors. Even from back in the day when we used our OnVIF driver, how we would auto import the cameras. That was one of the best things I liked showing in a new dealer training years ago, where we could auto discover the cameras. We could populate them at a press of a button. It brings them in and you're set up and you're live viewing cameras. You know, to do that with other control systems at the time, very time consuming, right? Had to configure each stream, had to go in, configure bit rate and everything to get them to display correctly. Surveillance is something that we've always done a little bit different, and I feel that we've always done a little bit better. So here in these features that we're going to go over here that were released in the 9.0, we're bringing that surveillance category even higher and higher here within the ELAN OS. So the first thing we talked about, audio support, right? So now what you're going to see even on live view here, you've got the option where you can enable or disable the speaker, slider for the volume, and then you've also got the mic button, right? So the mic, you can talk directly through the camera. If you see someone at the front door, maybe you don't have a door station, the doorbell rings, you got a camera up there at the front porch, you can see who's there. You can hear what they're saying, you press the microphone button and talk to them directly through the camera. And keep in mind, this is also something that's recorded, right? So anything in the NVR capability on playback, you're getting that audio as well as the video through our NVR solution. Video summary is also something that we've added. So what's nice is now you'll notice on the thumbnail view of all your cameras, you got a little lightning bolt down in the bottom corner. If you would hit that, it's like what we did here on the right. This is, a lot of you guys probably know Larry Cramp. This is Larry Cramp's house. He needs to clean up some of them leaves and get those garbage cans in. But you can see we've hit it, and it's going to fast forward through all the events. There he is walking the dog. And it's going to slow down. When it senses a motion event, it slows down, plays that event. When that event's over, then it does a fast time lapse to the next event. So it's a really cool way for your end user to get kind of a real quick snapshot of what's happened over a 12-hour period, right? So when you hit this lightning bolt, it starts actually at 12 o'clock midnight, right? And would go the full day up until current day. You also have the ability to navigate through there and start this at a specific time. Maybe I don't want to start this summary at midnight. Maybe I want to start it at 6 a.m. once the sun came up. I can navigate the timeline to 6 a.m., hit the button, and it will execute the summary from there. So a lot of playback features were added in here, and one of the things is the video summary. Time-lapse mode. So this is what we talked about. If I wanted to go just to maybe 6 a.m., and this is where I wanted to start the summary, I can navigate to the actual time on the timeline. And then the new button here is the double arrows, and we're calling this time-lapse mode. So that will do everything that we just saw in the last slide there when we hit the lightning bolt for the full 24-hour summary, except the only difference here is I can designate what time I want this summary to start, right? So as you can see right here, it's starting at 4:30 on that timeline, and I hit the arrows forward. It's going to start every event from 4:30 to current time. We'll play back. And then the event selector. So we've changed this to make it full screen on the event selector. Previously, what you had is you had a slider on the right where you have to arrow up and down, slide up and down to see everything. So our event selector now is rolling full screen where you'll be able to see and sort, all objects. So this is all objects. It's picking up person, vehicle. If I just wanted to sort by person, we can do that. If I just wanted to sort by vehicle, I could do that as well. So a little bit more deep dive where you can punch in and get to events that you want to see and not view the ones you don't. So a little bit more search features here on the event selector. Rich notifications. This is something that, we hear all the time. You going up and installing a door station or some cameras, and the end user would be, okay, well, why can't I get a still picture of the event sent to my phone? Well, brand X can do this, brand Y can do this, and it's a lot cheaper, right? So this was always a feature that was asked about, and we were kind of lacking as far as our notifications, because we'd send the push notifications to the phone, but then you would have to hit that notification. It would launch the app into the actual ELAN or NICE viewer app and then play the notification. So here we've got it. This will be embedded with the notification when it's sent. Now, because this is a cloud service, we are limited to $325 per month per system, right? Now, a lot of people will think, man, I'm going to hit that, right? We've tested this in beta. We had some pretty large systems. If these cameras are configured correctly, the only time we'll really hit that limit is if you've got notifications going and maybe you don't have the interval set correctly, where I've got a tree in the front yard blowing, or the motion area is not set correctly, or you're not omitting, maybe the camera view is getting the front yard, but you also got the street in the front. So every time a car drives by, it pegs it. So if the camera stream is configured correctly, the motion area is configured correctly, and you have the interval in between notifications, an end user is not going to want to get 6 motion notifications to their phone a minute, right? If something happens, send it to them, and now we can set the interval delay. You can both do it in Event Mapper, but there is also a way to do it in routines now, where we can configure on motion events, maybe they only get a notification once every 5 minutes if that event keeps happening. So keep in mind, we are capped to $325 per month. This is something that we're looking into upping in the future. I have a couple different options to do that. That's something that we're going to explore moving forward. So feature access by user classification. So we've got all of these features here. We've got the ability to listen, to talk, PTZ control, be able to put privacy masking on the camera feeds, as well as MVR playback. But now we've got the ability to define who has access to what based on their user class. So, we've kind of changed going from devices to users now, right? Back in the day, if we go to the interface tab, we would see all of the devices and they would just be device type, right? They wouldn't necessarily be linked to a user. Now they're linked to a user in the system. So you can configure, maybe you want little Jimmy, you don't want little Jimmy to have access to hear audio on the cameras, or to be able to talk through the cameras, or have PTZ control, right? Or privacy control, or NVR playback, right? So you can define which user in the house or which user in the, maybe it's a commercial setting, in the place of business has access to the specific features here based on the user class that you define them. So the live deterrent, now we've talked about this, right? And this is a fantastic low-res image of this actually happening, right? So the built-in lights, we can have them configured to flash, right? Motion events detected, the lights flash, red and blue as a deterrent. They're like, oh, there's a camera up there. Maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. You also have the option to, based on an event, play a sound. You can do a pre-canned tone through the speakers, or a built-in phrase from the camera. And with Milo, we talked about the text-to-speech. You can basically do a text-to-speech phrase, whatever you want it. You can get really creative. We've got an RTS down in the deep south in Texas that has some interesting custom phrases done that play out of his cameras. When in Texas, right? So you've got the option here with Milo to really take this customization to the next level. Do anything that you want. Trigger off those speakers via text-to-speech with the use of Milo license. So smart color night vision, and this is kind of how this works here, right? So again, with the images, you can be configured for, when it gets dark, the IR turns on, right? And your standard IR, pretty good distance actually on just standard IR. When it gets nighttime, then we've got the middle picture here. What we've got is if we're detecting an event, right? Person, vehicle, motion, right? We can have the not the red and blue lights come on, but the white LED will come on, senses a motion event, illuminates the field of view. When the event's over, the white light goes off, it goes back to IR, right? So that's what we're calling the smart color night vision. So based on events, you're getting standard IR when it gets dark outside. It can be configured for when a motion event is detected. That white LED comes on, illuminating the field of view for the camera. When that event is done, the white light goes off and goes back to standard IR. And then UIX track activity. So this is a cool feature here. When a lot of people using UIX, I use it here at home a lot, and you can basically have it configured to tag an activity type. So whether we want just all motion or person, vehicle. So basically, what's happening if I'm watching grid view, maybe I've got it up on my TV in my office here. I've got my cameras up. If there is an event, whether it be person, vehicle, or motion, that image of that grid view will blow up to a larger picture, like you see here in the image here. So the grid view would normally be a 3x3, but it's detecting a vehicle on one of the cameras, and that blows up to a higher field of view on the UIX automatically. We also have the option now to do NVR custom events. So we can trigger a tick mark on the NVR timeline based on any event we want from any other subsystem or node that's programmed into the system. Let's say a common use case for this, maybe we don't have a door station installed. We got a camera by the front door, but we don't have a door station. We just got an old school, I call it an analog doorbell, right? But maybe we're taking that sense input from when that doorbell button is pressed. So I can configure an NVR event, like you see here on the right. I could name it, doorbell pressed, and I could use it for the sense input from the controller. That's my trigger. So when the doorbell is pressed, that triggers a tick mark of whatever color I define. I can also define an icon on the actual NVR timeline. And then it will play that camera feed. So someone comes up, rings my doorbell, it's automatically putting a tick mark at the front door camera. So now when I go back to sort and watch my playback on my NVR, I'll have some options. I have not only just person, vehicle, but then I will also have something that says front doorbell. So you have the option to tag any number of options here. And again, it's based on what's plugged in to the system already. You can have it tied to a security contact. You have it tied when a light switch turns on. Sky's the limit. So we're utilizing the other subsystems that are already included in the control system as triggers to define a custom tick mark, which will help with sorting and playback when we're watching our video footage that's recorded. And NVR custom events, also in the event mapper now. So this isn't something that we had prior. So we can added the ability to have it in the event mapper now, where NVR, normally we would just have, person, vehicle. Now we can tag any of that custom events are available for hooks in the event mapper for triggering. And you can see how it looks like on the interface here. This is a screenshot from Jonathan here, and it looks like he has it tied to a light switch or patio light on, right? So you can see on the right here where the one event, if I'm searching the event types, patio light on, it's got one event at 9:40 p.m. and it's triggering a cut shot from that video feed from that patio camera. Another thing we added in the 9.0 release is we were kind of enhancing our entry control, right? So you guys know we've got the ELDB, it's our Gen 2 door station. There's two options, a straight PoE. We've also got the 2-wire option for retro applications where you just want to use the 2-wire going to the existing doorbell. That's already in the residence. These have been out for a while. A lot of you guys know what these are all about. You've been installing them already. I'll give you guys a sneak peek. There is a another model in the works to further bolster our doorbell lineup solution that we'll see later this year. But the one we're going to talk about here is the ELDB, and that's the Gen 2. We're not going to go through all of the specs. This isn't a new product. You guys know about it. But what we are going to talk about is what we've added is entry control. So this is a really cool feature. We've got two options using entry control with key fobs. So you can have the normal, key fob, almost looks like an AirTag type style, or you could have the, the clamshell or the two card styles as far as for key fob readers. These are available in 25 packs on the portal. And what's cool about that is you can schedule access. Once these are enrolled, they can be scheduled through the viewer locally or remotely. And we can also use that as triggers for an event map. So say I have a key fob and I've got it registered to my son, right? My son comes up, puts the key fob up to the door station. It will unlock the front door. He can get in. But I can also then use that as a event map trigger. If I want something to happen every time it senses the key fob that's enrolled to my son, right? So residential settings, this is nice when we think about it. And the end user then has a schedule where they can schedule or revoke access from any day of the week, right? So we're looking down at the bottom right-hand corner there in this slide where we've got Sunday through Saturday. We can do no entry, we can schedule, or all day, right? We can X out complete days. Maybe we don't want someone having access Sunday or Saturday. They've got a groundskeeper or a pool company or, cleaning lady coming 2 days a week. You can set that schedule, issue them the key fob, and they have access to, a specific door station, and we can trigger it to do any specific events that we want. So residential, you can think of the options on this, right? But think about, even further, commercial options on this is great. You have a scheduling manager right there remotely. You can do that on your mobile device. You can also do that on any touch panel. But if we really think of it, we've got a lot of dealers that are doing in the, the rental market, Airbnbs, VRBOs, right? So you could have a key fob, you can have it scheduled. Maybe you hide the key fob, in the mailbox. You got a tenant coming in to stay the weekend. You can remotely, enroll that key fob just to have access. Friday, 4 o'clock is check-in, 4 o'clock p.m., and it expires Sunday at noon, right, when they're supposed to be out. So this is all something where now we have the ability to manage access into a dwelling or into a business remotely, and it's all managed directly in the viewer. And then there's our prices. We got the MSRP on both models of our door station, as well as the 25 packs of the 3 different key fobs that we have available. Again, all are in stock, available on the portal, ready to ship. The last part of this we're going to talk about is routines. And this is something that I always like to tell this story. 4 or 5 years ago at CEDIA, we were, getting the CEDIA booth up and built. And of course, at CEDIA, we always run, latest and greatest or dev builds on the booth, right? Because we're showing new features, getting everything ready for what we call the CEDIA release, which is usually done at the end of the year. And as I'm scrolling through there, I see something down there where it wasn't named routines. I think it was, event map. It was named that in the viewer, where we had the option for the end user to go through. And when I called it at that CEDIA show, poor man's event mapping, I was showing it to everybody. The dealers are like, hey, this is awesome. We need this. The more control we can give to the end user, the better. But there's a fine line. It turns out, this was the very the infancy of this feature, and we were supposed to have it hidden in that build. So I'm showing all these dealers this cool feature, to lo and behold, it not be available for a couple years later. But move forward a couple years, we've refined it. We've kind of defined that fine line that we're walking. How much power do we give the end user? How much power do we leave in the hands of the dealer, right? To hard code certain events through programming, through configure, through the event map. And I think we've got there. So we've started out with specific subsystems. Routines is something that's going to be growing as the software revisions drop. Something we're going to be adding to. It's going to be evolving. And we've come to the realization, if you look at our typical end user, right? Way more tech savvy than they were 10 years ago. You've got a client that's spending X amount of dollars on a control system or an automation system for the house. They're expecting some sort of end user control or end user customization, because they're getting it from the Alexas, from the Googles, right? We're seeing a little bit of power being turned over to the end user because, let's face it, they're expecting it now, right? It's not so much just to control TVs and audio like it used to be. It's, I want to do cool things with my system. So this is where routines comes in, right? So routines is it's event map like, and it's all done through the viewer. So it's intuitive. It's something that an end user can navigate through without much guidance and kind of set up their own light event maps. So it is made of 3 sections, right? So when this happens, which would be our trigger, right? So And dynamically, once we hit the options to add things, the only things that are available for triggers are obviously only things that are already programmed in the system, similar to how our event map works. So it dynamically populates based on what the options are. So first we're defining our trigger, then we're defining our execution. So when this happens, there's our trigger. I want this to happen, right? Pretty simple logic there. But then we've also got an option where now they're conditions. So we've defined a trigger, we've defined what we want to happen, but maybe we only want it to happen Monday through Friday, or maybe we only want it to happen, from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So you have different conditions where you can define whether or not this happens all the time or only under specific pretenses. So what we've got as far as triggers, we can tag in video camera events, security system events, press of a button, system mode change. We can do it on time-based, certain time of day, Monday through Friday, do this. You can even do it through a voice trigger. If we have a custom voice trigger using our Milo, we know that it's native. I can go to Milo and say, turn off the basement lights, turn on Netflix. I can do all that. But if the end user wants a custom voice trigger, you can have it set for a custom phrase. Maybe they want it to be beer 30, right? End user goes up to the touch panel, says beer 30. It turns on a specific playlist out on the back deck, sets the lighting, gets everything ready for having guests over, right? We have the ability to not only do what's pre-canned, but they can make their own voice trigger events and then use that as a trigger in their routines configuration. And then we have the executables, or what happens. So notifications, we can do the rich push notifications like we showed on the mobile device, where you get that picture, that snapshot of the event. You can even have it push out to a touch panel, which is cool. We'll get to a slide about that in a minute. The lighting, of course, is in there. Media zones is in there. Security, system for system mode, and cameras, right? Play sounds, flash the deterrent lights, play a pre-canned text-to-speech Milo message that the end user has created. We can even have it, enable or disable privacy masking based on end user configurable routines. And then we've got the conditions, right? So time range, when do we want it to happen? Maybe only days of the week. And then minimum reoccurrence. So this is what's cool here. I like that we added this in here, and this is basically for notifications out on, camera events being detected. So camera analytic events. Back in the day, I always say back in the day, but we'd have to do it in the event map, right? You would have to set a delay under the condition where, if motion was detected on the driveway camera, send push notification to Jimmy's phone, right? But if we only wanted that to happen once every 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, we'd have to set timers in place. And the condition would be, is timer running? Yes, then ignore the notification. So we had to hard code it. Now we have the ability to do that right there in the app. You got predefined, minimum reoccurrence values that the end user can choose. We can also tie it for system mode. Maybe I only want something to happen in away mode, not in home mode, or maybe just in entertain mode. We can key it to a system mode. And we also have zone states, right? Do this when it sees this, do this, but only if this media zone is on. So we've got a bunch of different options in there as far as conditions where the end user can really refine and define what they're doing. I've got a story on the routines. So I live in a beta or alpha world here at home, right? My oldest is off of college. My youngest, 14 years old, creature of habit, loves the system, uses voice almost exclusively now since we've enabled it here at the house. And with the 9.0, as we were testing routines, I had routines enabled, got a touch panel downstairs in the basement. I've got a little, media room where, of course, he's completely overtaken and claimed his own, where he comes home to play video games and does whatever a 14-year-old teenager does, right? And there was a time where the day off was from school. I'm working 3:30. I noticed the shades go down and the lights go off because it's this media room's down the hall from my office where I am. And I heard the sound of the Xbox. If you guys know, when you power up an Xbox, it makes that noise as the Xbox logo is shown on the screen. And I'm like, huh, you know, Atlas is home. But he wasn't, right? So this all happened automatically. So I'm here, I'm looking through event maps. I'm like, how the hell is this happening? Lo and behold, he fumbled through, created a routine that timed when he would get home from school, he'd get a snack, get ready, you know, and it would predefine, it would make sure that the lights are off, the shades are down, and turn on his Xbox, right? And this was completely unprompted. You know, he knew, he's just poking around in there and figured it out. So the point of the story is these are our future end users, right? These are people that grew up with iPads or technologies in their hands, and this routines is something that we had to do. We had to give more power to the end user, more features, more the ability to customize, to feel like more that their system's their own, not just something that Dealer X installed for them. So routines is something that I'm really excited about. I'm getting long in the tooth here on this story. We'll get back to the presentation here. So the other thing we added here is image push on either a security zone faulting or a camera event. And this is cool. So say I've got a touch panel here, and you can have it determined or defined where every time the front door is open, it goes to a camera image and it will overlay on top of the touch panel, right? To let you know there is an event. You can also have it defined as to have a chime, right, when this happens. You have two options here that do it. You can do a little thumbnail like you're seeing in the bottom right-hand corner, or you can have it do full view on the touch panel. And there's two things that can trigger this. We can use the camera classification or analytics, you know, person or vehicle detected on a video stream, or we can have it tied to a security sensor for a security zone. So you can see on the left, he's got it tied for front door open. So every time that the front door is opened, you're going to get a image, either full screen or thumbnail, on the designated touch panel of your choosing, right? So it's dynamically, you're choosing which touch panel it targets. It's not going to go to all of them. It can, but you can also pick and choose which one that you want it to go through. So set announcements, and we've talked about that. This is also huge, right? So when security zones fault, we can have the announcement play through the touch panel or the HR40. You know, back in the day, we had, you know, a lot of dealers that were using the text-to-speech, right? And, you know, security systems, security panels, we'd hide them, or you'd put them somewhere that's not all that visible. And you'd use the ELAN touch panel and you'd play the announcement, the chime, you know, front door open, similar to the security panel would do. But back in the day, you had to program everything. So every zone you had to tie to a text-to-speech phrase and then tie that to an event map. So now that we've got, you know, Milo and the text-to-speech is back, it's basically you're designing, okay, where do I want the announcements? And you're just enable or disabling through a check mark, you know, what zones you want announced. So we've brought back this feature. This was a feature that was sorely missed back when the text-to-speech engine went end of life. So then deterrent actions is another thing that we can set in there. You know, we talked about that, and this is all configurable through routines, right? So we've got a trigger that's sent. It's detecting, you know, a person in the front yard, but you can use that for any event, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a camera event to configure this. You can have X number of triggers, and then what do we want this camera to do? Do we want it to play a sound? Do we want it to flash the red and blue lights as a deterrent? Do we want it to play a text-to-speech message through the camera's speaker? You know, and then we talked about privacy maskings, where we can even set the PTZ to a specific preset. And then lastly, something that we always get asked, we're all going to have these dealers that, I'm not sorry, not these dealers, you dealers will all have these end users that there's no way in hell you'll give these features to, right? We've all got those when I was an integrator as a business owner. Yeah, I had a couple clients that the last thing I would want to do is give them this because it would just cause a million phone calls. So you do have the ability to enable or disable this system-wide based on user class, right? So you can hide the routines if you think it's not going to be a good idea for an end user to use, but then you can also leave it where you, as the dealer, will still have access. What's nice about that is, you know, you can log in from a mobile device. You can configure a quick event map for an end user without opening your computer, launching configurator. So there are options where you can enable or disable, globally per user, where you could hide it from the end user, keep it as the integrator. So there are flexibility options with this new routines feature. So that concludes our webinar for this morning. Again, thanks for taking the time to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in the surveillance category and where we're going. So routines, really cool feature that we've added. We're going to be growing upon this, tying in surveillance with voice with the new Milo voice engine. Again, if you have not experienced Milo yet, reach out to your RSM. They can get you a demo license, and you guys can play around with it and see what it's all about with our native voice engine. So new cameras. It's currently beginning of February. A lot of you guys bought in on the pre-order on this new category. We've got another huge shipment coming in. That pre-order went out of stock relatively quickly. We'll see that the second week in February. We'll be flush with inventory on the cameras again. So go ahead, go to the portal, get your orders in so you guys can make sure you get a part of that next replenish shipment. Any questions on this, reach out to your RTS or RSM. And thanks again for spending some time with us this morning.